Pupa is not a straightforward theatre setting. It's a maze.
The set, the incredible puppets, the acting, everything mixing together to create this beautiful illusion.
The whole play is so immersive in that you are in it and you're being pulled along in the wake of these people.
It was so ambitious. It really required a huge team effort to make it work.
It was an incredibly ambitious and complex piece of theatre to try to realise.
It's amazing what you can do with a little bit of initiative and some really great people. In 2014, I approached Michael Finneran to talk to him about the idea of doing a PhD around puppetry and disability. I had quite a broad idea at that time, but not kind of a fixed plan. And it has changed quite a lot in the last 3 years. And it's become an academic and personal journey.
And this research started with this big empty space around disability and puppetry and Emma's identity as a professional, but also as a person. And I think what came about then was a layering and a development of the intellectual idea of the research, and then within the last 6 months, the artistic idea of the play.
The origins of Pupa really came about in the point in the research where I realised that in my own self had never actually come out as disabled, and what it means to do that and to be proud of that identity. And at the beginning, the idea was that I collect testimonies from other people that would form a play. But then I realized that actually, if I was going to ask people to share and be part of that I needed to be part of that too.
The play I found exciting because it brought all of these multiple ethnographic lenses to bear on the idea of disability. And all of a sudden, it became Emma's story as the meta story and Emma's story as the micro story. But then in the background, there were all these other voices from all the other parts of the play that were layering and giving a context to Puppet Emma's story and to Human Emma's story as well. And I think it filled it out. It made it seem real, it made it seem whole.
The show focuses on a number of different people, but primarily on Emma and Connor, both of whom have a disability, which they were happy to turn into a story for the show.
We had a workshop last summer where I talked, where there was a load of us, people with mental health issues. We talked about our different disabilities and how it's changing our identity and all that stuff. And then we talked about the play.
What we did was we talked generally around the group about different aspects of identity, and then we made paper puppets, which to look at how to better view ourselves. So as part of the research, I'm kind of looking at how a fragmented puppet, so say an arm with a head, can better represent my injury than these perfect representations of the body. And this made me realize that all along I've actually been puppeteering these perfect puppets. If you look at history, a lot of puppets are small and big and different colors, but there's very little representation of the disabled body. So I just thought it was really interesting that I as well had been doing this. I had been hiding behind these perfect puppets that didn't represent me at all. Through this process, it made me really start to think about the fact that I had never identified as disabled and wondered why that was. Now, I would consider myself a very abled person, but at the same time, I think there's something great about reclaiming the word disability and making it something that you can be proud of as part of your identity. And so their stories, and through that series of workshops and interviews, became the part of the play. I ended up with 6 stories, and what I found very challenging was the idea of writing 6 stories that would become one.
At the start, it was a lot of different stories and different scenes. And as the process went on in rehearsal, the scenes started to find themselves. Then the connection started to form between, and it became one journey rather than separate scenes.
You're dealing with real people and you're dealing with real stories, and there are decisions that I would like to have made as an actor, totally connected with people's stories and stuff. I would have made decisions that were kind of, that I would deemed to be acceptable, but actually you're dealing with the person, real stories, real lives, and so you have to be delicate with that.
As a director, it was a very interesting process because Pupa is a series of stories from very different backgrounds, and it was trying to weave them together, and also that they're real stories from people who are involved in the project. So it had to kind of happen organically, in a sense that when you're directing something like that, if it's coming from the person, you have to let them run with ideas and let them kind of keep formulating things and see where you can meet them and where things can go. You can't really lead or so, but you can suggest and you can guide, and that's so. It was very interesting in that way as a director.
It was very important for me that this play, which is the practice of my research, not be very like not trying to like shove points home, you know. It was very important that it's also a piece of entertainment, it's also a piece of theatre, and because it has such serious topics in it, it was very important that it be funny. And Tommy is a very funny guy, and he's also a fantastic puppeteer. And so he's actually got a hard task because he's directing it, but he's also performing quite a few little roles in it as well.
I think my concern as a puppeteer is more about the image and what we get across visually, and language in a sense can be secondary in a puppet show. In Pupa, we were looking for time, that the movement doesn't have to be quick, it has to be elegant. There's a rhythm in the whole atmosphere of the play, I think, which works very well together.
What? He's got legs! He's got legs. He must be right. Are you right? Don't be asking him questions like that. He doesn't know. All right, so we'll have to look in the book.
We were lucky enough to be part of the new play clinic, and we had Gavin Kafkaesque come down for 3 days. And what that did was fantastic. Gavin has this amazing ability of asking questions and framing things so that everything starts to become a bit clearer.
Gavin was able to ask questions that we'd kind of stopped really thinking about.
It was really interesting to be able to sit down with the actors, the director, the technical side of things, the writer, you know, all of those aspects sitting down together to talk about the show.
The very fact that the entire production team and design team took part in the New Play Clinic on this project is just a testament to how truly collaborative it was. To have all elements brought together at that early stage to make a truly immersive project is unusual but important for these types of projects to work.
I found it a really open, constructive, useful space to work in. I really enjoyed that collective conversation about how the play would be shaped, because I think for a long time it was Emma and I and Emma and I and Emma and I sitting over a table. And I know she had many, many other sources, but the conversation was two-way between she and I, and all of a sudden it belonged to all of these other people. So it was great. It
was possible to play in the scenes, to say what if and try things out, and you could bring it to a ridiculous point and bring it to a serious point, and then to find where the character sits.
It was just really interesting being able to analyse and dissect and just push things and seeing if it worked and if it didn't. And sometimes it didn't work, but sometimes these ideas, they just develop into something that's new, and it's just really interesting.
Yeah, Gavin plays a huge part in putting it all together and making it all clear to me, and guiding me in the right direction as to what I should do and how I should approach it.
At the start, when I met Gunther, he's such an interesting character, but I was a bit hesitant when I heard some things first about the music, because it is very abstract. But I think when he came to a meeting for Pupa and heard the stories, and that it's like he went home and he knew exactly, he hit every mark music-wise in the scenes, and it was that just made things flow even better.
Many things only fell into position when I actually heard Tommy talking about it, and when I could visualize the characters, and when I saw the puppets actually. That's when it all came together. Until then, I didn't really know what I was doing.
Having Gemma and then having Mike come in and having Gunther come in to the new play clinic and Patrick O'Brien meant that all of the songs and the sound and the lighting and the costumes are all, and the design of the set and puppets are all together, you know, they're synced and they're all there to tell a story. Because there's nothing worse, I think, than having a design of any kind that hasn't a reason behind it. So everything in Pupa, every object, every puppet, every costume, every lighting choice, every sound, every music choice has come organically. And having those 3 days with Gavin has really helped solidify that.
Emma was very keen to have a representation of herself and of Connor in the porcelain figures. She wanted to have the perfect figures that had no blemish or no flaw in them. The whole basis of these figures is that it's about the sameness of perfection.
As part of the play, we had created a device that sits on my shoulder here and strapped on. And when I move these two fingers here with a brake pad, my hand opens and closes. And it means that I'm able to pick things up here. But also, because I'm a puppeteer, I'm used to using different fingers for different things. So these 3 fingers are going to be on the head of a puppet. And so I'm able to operate something with this arm and use this arm, which is what's really exciting.
The device that we have collaborated to create is a combination of aesthetic and movement and function. So there are some elements of it where we purposefully did things that a mechanical engineer wouldn't, because it introduced more potential points of mechanical failure in the system, but then it facilitates very beautiful movement, which communicates things to the audience.
The device is very wooden, and it's used wooden and leather, so very traditional puppet making tools, because I really wanted it to look, we all really wanted it to look like a puppet.
Emma wanting to do that and me being very excited that was what she wanted to do, because I was secretly hoping when she contacted me, wouldn't it be great if this ended up looking like a wooden leather puppet? And I didn't want to suggest that because I didn't want to, influence the direction that she wanted to go with her vision. But then at the same time, I was really excited when that ended up being the case.
As it was technically part of the costume, something that had to be worn, I was able to help in terms of putting in the leather work that would be between the device and the skin to make it more comfortable, to be able to attach it to the body, as well as adding padding, and then just through the rehearsals, seeing what worked and what didn't, how it was easy to take on and off, and the length of time she was going to be wearing it was an issue as well, to make sure it was going to be comfortable for that period of time.
It was really important to me that my hand be visible. So Ivan was saying that it actually would have been easier to have a prosthetic that fits over my hand, but that was part of my thing, and he was delighted that that wasn't what I wanted either, that what I wanted was that my arm is visible. I don't want to hide it. So the whole part of this is looking at how for years I was trying to use devices and hide behind these perfectly formed puppets, and the idea that I was trying to be seen behind them as able-bodied as possible. Now this device actually is letting me do that, but actually what's really nice is now I'm using it as almost like a coming out in the play. So it's kind of a reveal.
The biggest thing, I suppose, was, and the biggest sort of worry from the beginning was, how are we going to cover this thing as well? Because to start with, we weren't sure how it was going to actually look on the body until it was made. And we wanted to make it as discreet as we could, but at the same time, it was quite a big piece, so it was going to be quite obvious. So it wasn't until I came down to finally, when it was finished and I came down to actually making something to cover it, we realized that I think there was no point in trying to pretend that it wasn't there. It needed to be covered so the audience weren't going to be trying to figure out like what it was or be distracted by it. But I think at the end of the day, the idea behind the show is that people are going to be looking at the puppet, and that's what's going to be taking people's attention. So we had something that covered it, the kimono style top covered it, and I think it was effective because it was simple. We didn't want anything too complicated, and it also needed to be easy to take it off at the end for Emma to be able to take it off on her own, to be able to get it all over the device.
So this amazing contraption, which so many people have helped with and Ivan has spent a very long time designing, actually only gets to be seen for about 5 minutes in the play, which is great. Floor under that dust covered lid. If you take a look inside.
Emma's set designs are always beautiful and ambitious, but also challenging from a production point of view. So when we first met in Mary I one day and we sat down and Emma had her model box and we all looked at it, I think our first thought was, how are we going to fit this in the bell table? But as always, an excellent team came together. We knocked heads and, between the carpenter and the director and Emma herself, we were able to create a whole world within the bell table in a way that it hadn't been done before that we had known of, and completely transformed the space to create something beautiful.
I think Colin Bartley, I don't think he realised what he was putting himself in for, but it was quite a big build and I couldn't have done without him. So he built this enormous maze for us and all the different elements in it. And then because it was such a big piece to install, and because I also had to be a performer, basically an SOS went out and my sister Eve Fisher, who was assisting me, kind of took over and to organise all of these people to help weave this set while we were teching.
We've had, I don't know how many people running in and fixing parts of the set and that. So when we were building up, there was so many people here, I didn't know who was who, and I just had to get on with things.
While we had an excellent professional group of people working on Pupa, we also were able to link in with Mary Immaculate College and get some of the students from their new drama course to be a part of the project. Because Emma's doing her PhD there and Dr. Michael Finneran was supervising her, we had a wonderful link with the college and a lot of support through that.
The great thing about Pupa was there's such a huge team behind it, and it's just amazing how many people got involved.
They did it because they cared, and they cared about Emma and getting her work out there. And that's what makes this the most beautiful production, because it is community. And that idea of ensemble, everybody working together towards a common goal. And this goal was bringing Pupa to life and helping Emma in any way we could.
I was in hospital, and I had all those beeps and things going on around me, and they were falling into position and creating a soundscape. And I then had the idea I'd like to make a piece of music out of this. And between one thing and another, I never got around to doing it. But then Pupa gave me an excuse, the motivation to actually go ahead and make that piece of music.
After our second day of our get-in, I, at the end of the night, came up to the tech box, which is at the top of the theatre. And I opened the door and you can see straight down into the whole theatre space from the tech box. And I could see a whole maze that we had built and created, and like 10 or 15 people just working tirelessly to make this ambitious project happen. And it felt like we had achieved so little in that day and a half, but from that wide shot, you could really see how much work had gone into it and how much we had achieved and how special the project was going to be.
It was an incredibly ambitious and complex piece of theatre to try to realise. Integrating technology, promenade, multiple sites, multiple stories, huge set, and puppetry obviously as well, and shadow puppetry, different forms of puppetry. And I thought at times, certainly in the week of the production and the few days leading into it, I thought we collectively had bitten off more than we can chew. But it was realised and it happened. And it was a very fulfilling thing to see it come to life and to tell the story.
When I was designing Pupa, it was kind of formulating at the same time as I was writing it. And I could totally imagine, instead of having it as a proscenium arch piece, I really wanted it to be a very interactive, kind of movable piece. And I wanted to bring the audience on a journey, and I just really wanted to immerse them in a physical journey.
When you're reading something and you kind of go, how are they going to do this? Because it's so immersive. Like the whole play is so immersive in that you are in it and you're being pulled along in the wake of these people.
We're taking people on a journey through different scenes, and Each scene has different elements. We go from shadow puppetry to real puppetry to light to sound. We're using as many different elements, and that's part of the story, I think, because when people come into a theatre setting and you show them a scene, the mind is okay, now I know what's happening. But it's not, because it changes to another scene. And then you automatically kind of think yourself, okay, so I've seen this scene, this scene, this scene, and you try and predict the next thing, but that's not what's coming in Pupa. And that's what's very nice about it as well, because part of the story as well is the unpredictability of things.
I think that this mix is really exciting, and it's something that I think it should definitely be nurtured, this mix of like real stories, puppeteering, acting, and then the delicacy with which you deal with the person's story. Like, that is something that should definitely be cherished, I think.
The question I have at the end of it is, how much of the story did the audience come away with, and what kind of things did they come away with? And of course, that's the beauty of theatre and that's the beauty of art. We'll never know.